everybody, it's Sarah Paikai here with Jennifer Kim. We are talking about the stages of ownership that happens in a unicorn team, one of our top favorite things to talk about. Today's video, again, I wrote it down just so I don't forget because you all have been asking and we are answering your questions. We're talking about the forming stage, aka when you're just figuring it out. So in this video, I'm going to be asking Jen Kim some of the most frequently asked questions that we get from viewers, our audience, our clients that I thought was worth pulling together because so many of you are asking the exact same questions. Good job, y'all. And also, though, we're going to go through what each of the roles, the visionizer, strategizer, and mobilizer inside of the unicorn team does in this particular stage. So if you have not yet, you're like, what is that? Unicorn team, visionizer, strategizer, who? There's a whole playlist that explains what each of those roles are. So you might want to get caught up there because we're going to be talking pretty in depth on how to operate in the stage as a unicorn team. That being said, let's dive in.
Let's go.
Okay, so this forming stage, we say it's a startup stage, a little capital, whole lot of courage, which I think is very cute. But tell us a little bit more about what do you think the main thing to focus on or to remember mindset-wise in this stage is?
So first of all, when you're forming your company, your idea, whatever you're doing, right? Just first of all, give yourself a little bit of a break, okay? Understand that right now is not, if you pace yourself 3 years from now, it is going to look wildly different.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you're in the forming stage, I would say have more fun and get more data.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So you've got a lot of ideas. You've got something you want to do. And actually, I'm going to give you a little clue on how you can be even more successful in the forming stage. And that is, start with something you're really already good at. And don't worry if you're like, but I don't want to be known for that.
I was just about to say that.
Nobody knows you, and they won't know about it 3 years from now, to be honest with you. But what you need to be doing in the forming stage is get confident. Like to feel more courage, to take more risks. And it's very hard to feel confident if you don't know your shit. Okay? And that's okay, by the way. If you don't know everything about what you ultimately want to be known for, you gain that through service and experience. So instead, and I'll just share a personal story. When I was forming, I left the corporate world in 2006, and I started a company selling underwear. And people were like, wait, you were like launching brands and like in high tech and advertising. How did you decide on underwear? And it was really based on the fact that because I had this background, I understood that the market needed it. And alas, I did very, very well. But it was also in an industry that was wrought with risk, AKA retail and real estate. In 2008, it caused me to have to give up all of it. So I had this huge surge of success. That's the forming, some people don't have success in forming, but I did. But then, boy, did I fall down. I didn't even make it past storming, which we're going to talk about in the next video, because I didn't start with something I already knew. I started with a market that I felt needed my product, which is one of the components of being successful at selling your product. But what I didn't have was I didn't have this retail operations background. I didn't understand inventory logistics. I didn't understand the financial reserves required to pay rents and all of the flaky ass humans who you're paying $15 an hour to work at your store, right?
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. All I had was my sexy idea about underwear. And again, I made some money. But if I had instead done what I'm doing now first, I would be so much even more ahead today. But I'm not mad at myself for that. There was a time I was, because you're always going to be in your head. We talked about mindset around like coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yes.
I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have done this. You're going to do that because you're a human being. And I was too. But now the cool thing is I get to teach people like you that if you start with something you actually know, go get that money, honey.
Yes.
Reinvest in your education and knowledge of the area you actually want to master. And then you can propel yourself into the next stage. But a lot of people are doing that wrong. They're like, for example, like I'll have people who, maybe they were in, I don't know, they were in operations in their past life, or they were accountants. And now they want to be, let's say, a life coach.
Okay.
And I'm like, if you haven't coached anyone, it's very hard to sell life coaching if your background is accounting, right? So how do you build that bridge? Well, informing, that's where you test how you're building that bridge, right? And so that's really what forming is all about. It's developing courage even more than cash flow. So, but you do want to make some money.
Yes.
But it's not, you shouldn't have expectations that you're going to make millions of dollars in the forming stage.
And that's a perfect segue to the question, which is like, what are some of the lies or the half-truths or the marketing bullshit that's being said on the internet about being in this stage? And I think that that's one of them. Like that right off the gate, you can be anybody and anything that you want to be just because you've put your mind to and you started to try to offer
6 figures
it.
in 6 weeks if you just learn my framework and process and formula.
Oh gosh, so
right?
many of those,
Like
yes.
whatever, if you've heard that, just know that that's a marketing scheme, okay? Because of course, we want to be successful faster. That again makes you human. But the truth is that successful people understand it's a journey.
Yes.
And I hope that these stages help you understand how you can navigate through them versus like thinking you've got to like get it all right. You will, I would put $100,000 of my own money down right now, seriously, to say that in the forming stage, you will not get most of it right.
Yeah, that part.
You won't. And actually that's okay. But the one or two things that emerge that are right will become your ability to leap into the next stage.
I agree. I think another thing that I hear often is that people struggle with this idea of imposter syndrome or feeling like, so I've taken this leap to be in this forming stage. I'm putting myself out there and I'm either getting crickets or I'm getting haters. And then they internalize it like, oh, there must be something wrong with me or my intellectual property, or I have to change the way I do it, because people say they won't buy this retreat that I want to do, but they will buy it if it's a 6-month program. And they change their mind often, I see, in the forming stage from outside influences that sometimes are data, to your point, that collect, but other times it's just this feeling of trying to prove themselves through this first idea and how successful it is immediately out the gate.
That, and also you become dogmatic about the idea, which is also very harmful. Meaning, when I say dogmatic, I mean like, this is the idea and it must work. Versus going, there are actually solutions for all kinds of ways around your idea. Like the kernel of the idea is good, but there's a lot of ways that it can be executed. And that part is so important in the forming stage. And this whole idea of outward, I don't know, reliance on outward approval or whatever, they're not qualified to tell you a damn thing. That's what y'all need to understand. They are not qualified. And if you listen to that stuff, you'll never get out of the forming stage. And I know it's easier said than done. I want people to like me, right? But first of all, trolls and haters don't even know you. And crickets, how do you even know they're crickets? It's probably you just don't have a wide enough net yet, but you're learning how to build that net as you grow.
So true, so true. So let's talk a little bit about the unicorn team roles in this stage, the visionizer, strategizer, and mobilizer. So we say that in stage 1, the visionizer is responsible for creating that MVP, like we talked about in our first video, or a minimum viable product. So creating really what that offer is and how they're serving their market with it. And then they're also testing a business model for themselves and what they like doing. And then they're testing the traffic mechanisms of organic paid partnerships. So I won't have you go through like the minimum viable product again, because we just did a whole video. Check that out if you haven't seen it yet on what that is. But tell me more about, what does it mean to test a business model? What does it mean to test traffic in this stage?
So let's start with traffic, because I want to help people understand what traffic is. Traffic is simply marketing. Okay. Yep. Period. It's the mechanism of marketing. So it's the mechanics of marketing. And Sarah just mentioned organic, paid, and partnership. Those are the three categories of marketing. So organic looks like, the things that you might be doing through email, like your email list, or building a social media profile on Instagram, if that makes sense. Or even if you live stream, most of the platforms, it's still free to live stream, right? So that's an organic traffic mechanism. Writing articles, getting press. These are all ways to get traffic organically. And then paid is literally paying for advertising, paying for Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads,
YouTube.
SEO, YouTube, right? And then partnership is partnering up with other like-minded individuals who have audiences that would benefit from your offer. So when we talk about traffic in the forming stage, what you're really testing is mainly organic, because a lot of us don't have a ton of money in the forming stage to be just like throwing it on paid ads. And I will say this, I love paid advertising. And if you understand it and you have the right team around you, it's actually a great way to get forward, to build your brand.
And if you have a clear offer.
You have a clear offer.
That part.
So, and partnerships, you're forming through relationships by being, part of communities. But really in the forming stage, you're really focusing on organic for the most part. And I actually will say, this is like 2.0 video, but learning partnership and paid traffic in the forming stage is really smart. Okay. It just takes a little bit more risk, and we can talk about that offline, or if you're in one of our programs, because it's a nuanced thing. So there's that part. And then you talked about, traffic, and then what was the other thing?
Business model.
Oh, right, business model.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
So business model means simply how your company earns profit, earns revenue, right? So the business model could look like, again, a consultancy. If you're a service-based business, typically consultancy, potentially it could be a retail model, right? I talked about, and retail model is not just stores. It could be you are now an independent tax accountant. You're no longer with H&R Block or whatever, right? So that's kind of that. A business model could be e-commerce, meaning you sell your products only online, right? A business model could look like, hey, I'm an education-based business, so I want to sell information, knowledge,
courses, programming, certifications.
So these are all different kinds of business models that you're testing out in the forming stage. What feels good to execute? How do I like to deliver the promise of my MVP?
Okay, cool. So I'm going to tangent just slightly because I can't help it. One of the number one things that I hear from people in the forming stage is that they want to create a membership as their business model. What's your thoughts on that for this stage? Because, $19, if 1,000 people buy your $19 product every month, or they're enrolled into this membership, you're making $19,000. It sounds simple. The math sounds easy.
I know that idea of recurring revenue sounds so juicy. And I love recurring revenue, FYI. In fact, back to my corporate roots, when you're in the corporate world, they're always focusing on recurring revenue. They actually incentivize teams to come up with ways that the company can sell products that are recurring. So a great example of recurring revenue in the corporate world is like laundry detergent. Like everyone's got to wash their clothes, at least I hope so. Okay. And so once you run out of the Tide, you got to go get more Tide, right? So the same thing with, if it's a services-based industry. But why I hate, and I did say hate, this is how passionate I am about it. I hate membership in the forming stage because you don't have an audience yet.
Yes.
And a membership does not sell itself to mystery people, okay?
Especially not 1,000 of them, even if it is only $19.
Girl, even one person, 10 people. Imagine if you had one person sign up for your membership and now you have to support them at $19 a month.
Oh, my Lord.
You might as well just shut it down and pay them back. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not worth your time, energy, or money. Not in the forming stage. Membership is great for stage 2, 3, and 4, and more like the latter part of stage 2. So we can talk about that when we talk about stage 2, but the bottom line is no moss on the memberships. and if anybody tells you otherwise, send them to me so I can give them a good talking to. Yeah.
I'm here for it. Okay, so there's like this little trick question in here that says, what does a strategizer role look like here? But in this stage, in the forming stage, the visionizer is Visionizer, strategizer, mobilizer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, janitor, CEO, all rolled
100%.
into one, right?
Yes.
So we talk to visionizers at this stage about really understanding what their unique message model is, what it makes them stand out in their marketplace. Why is that the important or the most important strategy to execute on here? Say even above other things that might fall in the strategizer category, like funnels or paid advertising, or like collaborating and paying a PR agency to get you booked on big stages. Why do you start with the unique message model needing to be what's most strategic for this stage?
Yeah. Well, because honestly, it comes back to clarity for yourself and for the people that you want to purchase your products or services. And in the forming stage, remember, our big goal is to get an MVP, a minimum viable product. And in order to do that, we need to be able to message why this is such a unique solution to the marketplace. There's a lot of people that do what you do, I guarantee it. So refining that message and building upon it as you grow through the stages is really important, because this unique message in the forming stage is not going to be exactly the same in the other stages. This is the time to build a foundation of what you stand for. Typically that starts with your values, the archetypes that we do in our own, what we do in our campus, how we help people get to their unique message. And honestly, it will always serve you, whether you're in any stage. Every company, big or small, is trying to communicate how they help people. And if you don't know how you help people in a succinct way and something that looks different and why people would choose you over somebody else,
yes,
who's better at marketing than you, who may have more cash available, especially when you're in the forming stage. How can you compete with somebody who's in stage 3 or 4? The only way you compete is to build your unique message.
And I think that that's really key. The unique message is so important, because I see oftentimes there's like this, we rush through this part of the messaging at this phase, like, oh, I help people feel confident and inspired and love their lives more. And that's so broad in what that can mean. And there are hundreds of thousands of other life coaches who are using that same message. What is unique to you and how do you really flavor that? And there's this oh, well, if I just check it off and I have a message, then this is good enough, I can make millions. And that's not quite the correlation of how
I wish
it
was, because we would be like Warren Buffett level,
We'd be like
y'all.
bajillionaires at this
Like
point.
we would be wildly, like all of us would be wildly rich if that was that
That would be
easy.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally the role of the mobilizer. So at this stage, the mobilizer is usually part-time. Sometimes they're like an administrative or a virtual assistant, maybe somebody who's overseas, for example. And we teach people that at this stage in their business, the mobilizer should be taking on tasks that take the visionizer 15 minutes or less, or things that are administrative that they shouldn't be handling. Why is that? Like, I've had some people say, well, if it's going to take me 15 minutes or less, why don't I just save the money and do it? It's going to be really quick. It'll be faster for me to do it than even to train somebody else and to teach them. I don't have a desire to have any type of support. It's not that long, So there's a lot of that conversation that I hear early on in stage 1. What's your thoughts around that?
Well, I'm just curious if you want to be making minimum wage when you should be making more money per hour creating and messaging what you're up to. Imagine, okay? And here's the thing. My philosophy of life is to work on the right hard things. I'm willing to work on the right hard things so that I can have a life that I love and autonomy inside of my decisions. But I also call my approach fancy lazy. And what I mean by that is, it's not just cute and funny. It's really about, what is Gen Chem absolutely the best at? And one of the questions that I ask myself is, what is the highest revenue generating activity that only I can do, especially in the forming stage? And in the forming stage, that is talking about the product, messaging the product, creating relationships with potential clients. It is not for me to manage my calendar, for me to,
Customer service emails.
Let me tell you what, y'all. First of all, if you're a visionizer, most likely you aren't an organized person.
No.
Period.
Period.
But you think you are. And so you make excuses that I don't want to spend 10 to, let's say, even upwards of $20 an hour for an admin to support you. But that's basically like you're saying, you should get paid $10 an hour to do that task. I thought you wanted to make $100 an hour. I thought you wanted to make $1,000 an hour. But here you are thinking small. And by the way, in the forming stage, please don't delegate your entire messaging and marketing out to anyone.
You can get some support with that.
Get support.
Get some mentorship and consulting in the
Join
reps
our
in.
messenger mastermind.
100%.
It's a great way to like learn how to message yourself.
But you can't just give that away. Hey, a copywriter is going to write this all for me.
They don't know you.
A brand company is going to put this together and
You're
it'll sell.
trying to figure it out in the forming stage. Remember, this is
Yes.
the stage we're in right now.
Yeah.
When we get to stage 2, you're going to get more confident and you can get even more expert help on the marketing and messaging side. But in this first phase, become educated in messaging. Write things out. Think about how you want to like send out those messages and then test those messages.
Fulfill the product. Show that the
product.
product works, right? Because you're trying to get what takes you from stage 1 to stage 2 is having that MVP, having a minimum viable product that you know people will pay for and that they'll get the results that you're promising.
And they don't pay for it because it's good.
That part.
They don't pay for anything because your product's good. I'm sorry.
I wish.
We're not tied, okay?
Yeah,
like,
I wish.
Okay. They pay for it because you've messaged the reasons why it will benefit them to buy it. And that's why in the forming stage, you becoming obsessed, frankly, with getting better at that part will serve you. It'll actually, if anything will move you faster through the stages, it's going to be that.
Yes.
It's your willingness to be an apprentice in your own business, to master a message that allows people to understand how you help them. If you get focused on that in the forming stage, your business could look like it's bananas. And again, probably not in 6 months, but definitely possible.
On the right path, 100%, 100%. Well, this was such a great conversation. I know so many of you who are watching this or are new to us are probably in this stage. We see you. You guys are amazing. You have some awesome ideas, intellectual property, gifts that you can bring out into the world to help impact and serve those who need what you have the most. And you can be rich and recognized as you're going up these stages for that work that you're doing, because you deserve to be paid well for the services that you are providing. And part of the way that we're explaining what to do to go from stage 1 to stage 4 is how to build that momentum to go from where you're imagining right now and just casting that vision to actually actualizing it in the work that you do. So if you don't know what the unique message model is, because we cited this quite often, be sure to check out some of the other videos that we have around the unique message model, because Jen has taught quite a few. And also be sure to join us for our next video, where we're going to be talking about stage 2 and what happens in that unicorn team business stage. We'll see you all then.